Sports Talker Nation, welcome back once again. It is the G-Man, your host, and today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take our maiden voyage into the wonderful world of handicapping. So, to all my fellow degenerates out there who may or may not decide to place the occasional for amusement only gamble during this March Madness as it approaches, this is certainly going to be the podcast for you. It is the greatest time of year to be a gambler. When you have baseball getting ready to heat up, you start to look at some long-term bets on baseball. March Madness is the greatest two-week sporting event in the world. It outdoes the Super Bowl, it outdoes even the NHL playoffs, which I think are fantastic. But just the magnitude of games, the volume of games, the different opportunities you have for plays, there's a ton of upsets. It's just a great time to be a sports fan and certainly a great time to be a gambler. I'm going to give you some quick, let's call it 101, Sports Talker 101 on how and how not to gamble. Now, I'm going to avoid what everyone always says, and that's, bet within your means and all that. Fuck that. This is the time that if you're going to blow it all out, if you have a budget, this is when you're going to blow your whole budget gambling. Because after this, baseball is sparse. There's going to be nothing until the NFL season. You have plenty of time to make that money back. So this is when you go for the gold. What I will say is, don't be stupid and pick a particular trend to follow. I'm not a believer in trends. I know everyone loves to hear the 5-12 matchup, and you always bet on the 12s, and that used to be true. A long time ago, it was 1 out of 4 every year minimum beat the 5 seed from the 12 seed spot. And that was great because if you played a money line play, you could actually make enough money to cover the losses on the other. But now, with so much parity in college sports, those 5-12 games are about 140 to win 100, or 100 to win 140. That's not nearly enough to make up if only 1 out of the 4 wins. I'll tell you now, as it approaches, the 4-13 line actually offers a little more value. If you're looking for a particular line to start betting on some underdogs, that's where the value is because your money line's still going to be high enough. The parity is still insane, so the 13s have a decent shot. That's what I would highly recommend. So that's recommendation number 1 as you go into this tournament. Number 2, look to who can win a couple rounds. Instead of when you fill out your brackets, just trying to say this team's better than this team, so they're going to win. What you want to do is, if there's a close matchup, say a 7-10 or an 8-9, you want to look and say, not only can this team win, but this team can then go ahead and win the second round because their style against proposed matchup and that sort of thing. That's who you want to play because that's where your value is going to be, and the other people filling out brackets with you, that's where you're going to get that value. So always look to the long-term strategy of who can win moving forward. As far as individual gameplay, don't go crazy and assume that the better team always wins. It's an emotional game. It's a very guard-driven game, especially in the tournament. And there's going to be times where one guy just comes out and shoots the lights out and blows your squad away. Don't just bet on the number 1 seed over the 16 seed. If you happen to have a site or a guy who will let you bet money lines, even though it's a 20-point favorite, what I'd recommend is combining all of those money lines together. So bet on all the number 1 seeds and most of the number 2 seeds, although I'll tell you there are some 2 seeds that are vulnerable, as Villanova seems to prove every year, much to my delight as a Temple fan. But if you can package 5 or 6 big money line favorites together, you drop those odds down and you can actually get maybe an even bet. If you want to go even more aggressive, you take 4 of them, say you take all 4 number 1s, you combine it with a spread game later, like an 8-9, and you can actually win a little money. You bet 100 to win 110. So moneyline always seems too easy. It never is. There's a lot of upsets in the tournament, but stick to those high-ranking money lines and combine them together. You should be able to make a little bit of money. I also am a big believer in bet on the tempo of the better team. A lot of times you'll see, Iona is the perfect example for me from a couple years ago. They are such a run-it-up team. They got in a tournament and they played a slow-it-down team. I believe it was Wisconsin, and they had no chance to implement their tempo. They had no chance in the game, and their tempo, they scored 130 points instead of the 165 that I think was the forecast. You have to assume that the better team is going to set the tempo. If that happens, you can also tend to figure out who's going to win the game, who's going to be frustrated, that sort of thing. That's about it, guys. There's a lot to be said, and I will be offering my selections, my brackets, everything moving forward, as gambling is a way of life in my household. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to have plenty of insights to offer as each round of the tournament goes further. But for now, I hope that gives you a little taste of what we're going to talk about as the madness begins. I am the G Man, and I am out.